101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of several books, no other than Miss Christina Braver.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Christina, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
I am an author I write steamy romance novels, which means that they have explicit scenes in them. This is my third career. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology. I worked as a therapist for several years, and then I worked in healthcare technology. I live in the Pacific Northwest where tech is kind of king. So I worked in healthcare technology for a while, and now I'm a full-time writer. But because I have that background in clinical psychology, I've always sort of been interested in people's wounds and how things that happen in our childhood impact us later in life. And that's sort of the basis of my character driven stories. And also, I read a lot of books by sex therapists. Healthy, sex, accurate sex education and information is not always readily available out in the world. And so, I read a ton of books by sex therapists. And I put real information into those steamy scenes. So,
Miss Christina Braver, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. Hoping for more and more and
yes,
more books to come. And
absolutely.
yes, indeed. How have our romance novels evolved in the themes, character depth, and societal relevance over the past few decades?
It's a great question. So, a big impact in a lot of people think romance novels are, when we think romance novels, we think the man on the horse with the damsel in distress in his arms and her ripped bodice open, if you will, and flowing hair on the cover and that sort of thing. But in the early aughts, so in the early 2000s, the proliferation of e-readers really impacted the romance novel industry. It impacted the romance novel industry more than any other genre because now anyone could read a romance novel and no one would know what you were reading. So that concept of the romance novel with the man on the horse sometimes was romance novel reading romance novels were kind of this dirty little secret that people did in private, right? Romance is not real literature, and it's too sexy and those kinds of things. So with the e-readers, anyone could read a romance novel and no one would know what they were reading. And what we observed was a huge explosion in purchasing of romance novels for e-readers. The second big thing that happened to impact romance and cause sort of that evolution, spark that evolution, is in 2019, Romance Writers of America, which at the time was the largest professional writing organization for romance writers, had a crisis around inclusion and around again, just around inclusion and racism and sexism and those kinds of things. And so what happened was a lot of the traditional houses, a lot of big authors were maybe not big authors, but a lot of authors were implicated. A lot of the traditional houses were implicated, and it brought to the surface this concern that romance novels are not just about cisgender heterosexual white people, that everybody in the world deserves to see themselves in a romance novel. And so that sparked a huge effort towards diversity in romance novels. So in the last couple of decades, 2 to 3 decades, we've seen this evolution of diversity. One, because now we have a huge variety of people reading romance novels in paperback, but also on ebook. And we have a huge push towards diversity in the characters that we feature in those stories. So romance novels can no longer be described as one kind of thing. So they've evolved quite a bit and are tackling real issues like sexual health, which I tackle, also real issues around racism, sexism, women's health, domestic violence, um, alternative I'm sorry, different different genders, different races all together. There's just this huge diversity that folks can now see themselves in a romance novel. So
Miss Christina, your hero, your heart, your tulips, your turn, and these are six. What your one and your sweetness. Can you tell us about this
mhm.
novels?
Absolutely. These six books are a group of interconnected standalones. The first three novels are two brothers and a sister. The second three novels are their friends. They all take place in this shared world. They can be read in any order. There's some side information that kind of flows from the first book to the sixth book, but it's not going to be anything that damages your experience of the books if you read them out of order. That's not a problem at all. They're Obviously, they have a happy ending. They're lower in angst, so not a lot of drama, except for your hero has is light suspense, and I do include that in the blurb and the description. It does have light suspense. But again, one thing I really try to do is include some real information about sex in the love scenes and in the stories and in the characters as they present themselves. The first book, Your Two Lips, is book one, and the heroine in that book has severe endometriosis and ends up having to have a hysterectomy at 25. And we find this out in the first chapter. It's not a spoiler alert, but in the United States, we don't talk about endometriosis. It has to do with women's periods, and that's dirty, and that's private, and that we should never talk about that. When in fact, there's about 6 million women in the United States that suffer from endometriosis, and not only does it impact fertility, but it can also impact pleasure with sex. So it can cause a lot of pain, and so she is a heroine. She's starting out. She's had a hysterectomy, and she's had this history of painful sex, and she's like wanting to know what all the fuss is about. I can't go down this road of having the family that I wanted, so I'm going to go down this road and find out what all the fuss is about. And she meets a hero. He's a tulip farmer. The
Mm,
This area of the Pacific Northwest, we have up near the Canadian border. We have what's called the San Juan Islands, and in that area, there are more tulips grown in that area than anywhere else in the world outside of Holland. So it's a big tulip area in reality, that space is. And these books are all set up in that area of the San Juan Islands, which is right off the northwest coast of Washington, just underneath the Canadian border. So she meets a man who's a tulip farmer, salt of the earth, good guy, but he's kind of been a player, has had lots of experience, sexual experience, and he sort of thinks that he has women figured out. And turns out that's not true. Turns out women are complicated, and yeah, they have to talk about what feels good to her and what works and what doesn't work. And so that's a component that I've observed in some romance novels. In a lot of romance novels, the hero sort of just knows what the woman wants and how to give it to her and that sort of thing. And that's not really how it works.
mhm.
But I don't think that that means that having conversations about what we like and what we don't like is unsexy. I think it's actually quite sexy, and that is one of the purposes and points in Your Two Lips, is that those conversations and that connection that develops in those conversations as they kind of grow together and figure out what he likes, what she likes in the bedroom, and as well as outside the bedroom. So that's the first book.
Okay.
Um, Go ahead.
Go ahead, miss.
Okay.
Continue.
The second book, is Your Sweetness. That one, the heroine has some body image issues, and the gentleman that she is falling for, or the hero in that novel, is athletic, and he's good looking, and he's all the things that culture tells us men are supposed to be. He's all the things, and she has some body image issues. She's not confident, which I think is a pretty common experience for women, in certainly in Western culture. And the conversations that they have sort of opens the lens on the reality that not all men have the same taste in partners. Like, some men want someone to be thin and athletic. A lot of other men have reported liking partners who are softer, fuller, curvier. this is not something that is talked about a lot in Western culture. There's this beauty ideal of thinness and perfect skin and beautiful thick hair and all of these things that are present us as beauty ideals that we struggle with. And she is Joe is her name, and she's struggling with that, and just the conversations that she has with that hero about what beauty really is for him. And it kind of taps into that idea that I think men are sort of given sold a false bill of goods, or maybe women are sold a false bill of goods that men only like one thing, when research shows us that men are different and unique, just like women. They all have different tastes, what they like and what they look for in a partner physically. So your sweetness sort of taps into that. Your Heart is the third book, and again, a little bit with the beauty theme. The heroine is beautiful, perfect features, classic, but it's not as much fun as it sounds. She's shy and she's introverted, and for someone who's shy and introverted, the sort of unwanted or unasked for attention that you get in the culture for being someone that is really beautiful and seen as sexy can be intimidating, can be off-putting, can be scary, could be difficult. And so she's judged for the way that she looks. A lot of women in Western culture, I think, feel judged for the way that they look. And sometimes we think about, well, it's people are only judging the people that don't meet those high quality standards of beauty, right? But people who do meet those high quality standards of beauty are still judged. They're still seen. There's assumptions that are made about their life and how, if it's easy or not. And so this Your Heart really taps into looking at beauty. The hero is someone who he has facial scarring, so he doesn't feel beautiful and he doesn't feel like he's good looking enough for her, but there's a connection between them. It's actually a second chance romance where they were each other's first love, and they're kind of brought back together. So really looking at the definitions of beauty, that's something that's important. That's a key concept in Your Heart. The next book, Your Turn, is really one that's close to my heart. The heroine is a sexual shame culture survivor. So some cultures, human sexuality and sex is shamed, seen as dirty, bad, wrong, evil, lots of things. What therapists are finding out is people raised in that culture are really having a hard time having healthy relationships once they're married. So once they're in a committed relationship, it's still difficult to turn off all of that negative energy around sex and have a healthy sexual intimate relationship with your partner. So I wanted to sort of tap into that and take a look at the that sexual shame culture and how that can impact. So she is a sexual shame culture survivor, and she is breaking out of that and wanting to have a healthy sexual relationship. She meets a man who also has some issues around sex and what's good and bad and right and wrong in that space. And together they develop a friendship, and then they find that they sort of navigate a journey to finding a healthy sexual relationship together. That's a key component, a key theme in that book. The next book is Your One, which features a heroine who is sassy and all the things, and she is very much screw the patriarchy and women rule, and she's strong and independent and sexually confident and all the things, right? And she struggles because she likes to submit in the bedroom, which is super common for powerful women, powerful people. It isn't just for vulva owners, but powerful people oftentimes like to submit in the bedroom, studies have shown. So, but for her, it's difficult for her to do that because women are not supposed to submit to men in any way. She's all about woman power, and that desire to submit to her safe partner, she struggles with that a little bit. So she kind of works through that with her safe partner, and he is working to be the guy that she needs, and he wants to dominate her in a safe and healthy, agreed upon way, but he also doesn't want to. He struggles with the idea of being a predator or being coming on too strong, which is something that studies have shown that a lot of men struggle with. A lot of men want to be more aggressive in the bedroom, but fear that if they do, they'll be seen as a predator, or uh, it won't be, their partners won't like it. They'll be bad. They'll be canceled in some way. So uh, that it kind of touches on those dynamics between the power dynamics between the genders in the bedroom and outside the bedroom. And then lastly in the story is your hero, and she is a single mom. And he, I think one of the key components of their relationship, they both work in jobs that are typically thought to be a job taken or held by the opposite gender, another gender. So for example, he's an elementary school teacher, she's a chemical engineer at an oil refinery. And so how do those things impact their relationship? The cultural pressure of working in an environment with people who are not your gender and have maybe preconceived notions about your gender. Um, how does that impact you as a person? How does that impact you as someone who's showing up to be in a relationship? And then she's a single mom, and there are some things there. Women in particular, one of the things with women, we have what in our sexual arousal, it's been called like accelerator and brakes. So there's things that push our accelerator, turn us on, get us going. There's things in our life that put on the brakes that are going to prevent us from being able to access arousal and being ready for sex and interested in sex. And so things like work stress, uh, caring for family, a shopping list, a to-do list, all these things in our mind. It's difficult for women to set those aside and focus on the accelerators and connecting with our safe partner and being in the moment in that intimate time with our partner. And the heroine in this book, she and the hero are kind of getting hot and heavy, and in her mind she's thinking, oh, I need to add a lock. That door doesn't have a lock, and I need to add a lock to the shopping list. Maybe I can do that when I go to the hardware store on Friday after the grocery, and she's totally checked out now from this intimate scene. And that's something, that's something that happens, that a lot of people, we don't talk about that. Where some of us are not even aware of it. Um, and our sexual partner can feel rejected. Hey, are you here with me? Like, what are you doing? And if she says, oh, I'm working on my grocery list, oh my gosh, like the partner's going to feel just so rejected. And so kind of talking about that reality of sexuality and sexual experience for women. So that's one of the things that I tap into in that book.
Miss Christina, thank you so much for sharing your series to the world. Hoping for more and
Yes.
more upcoming series to come. So, do you think
Mhm.
you will continue this series?
No, this series is complete. I have a standalone coming out in July, a new standalone coming out in July, and then I'll be starting a different series set also in the San Juans, but in a different town. But no, this series is complete, and I loved these characters, but it was time to move on uh, to a different space, a different set, a different group of people that I was intrigued by. But it will still be Christina Braver novels. There will still be complex, character-driven stories. There'll still be plenty of steam with real sex information. Um, right now, I'm sort of deep diving into some books about men and their experience and masculinity and all of the things. So I'm really trying to dive into that. But all my novels are dual POV, so I do have chapters that are in the man's perspective. So I want to make sure that I'm informed and presenting those men as realistically, authentically as possible. Um, my heroes are not alphas. They're not let me show you what you want, baby, kind of a guy. Uh, they're a little bit more like, I think, the guys that are out there in the world. I think there's a lot of nice guys out there that are not getting a lot of press and are not getting represented in romance novels. And I love my heroes. They're great. They fall first and they fall hard for their heroines and they fight for them. And it's so romantic and so loving. And I just love all of them. And I get a lot of feedback uh, about how people really like my heroes and resonate with them. Definitely.
Indeed. So, Miss Christina, how do modern romance novel challenge outdated beauty standards and promote self-acceptance?
Particularly now. because of the diversity, you have a lot more heroines that are not the skinny conventional type of beauty. They're not they're not the conventional idea of a woman who um, maybe submits, or a woman who doesn't have a strong personality. There's like I said, there's diversity in all those characters, both in appearance and in personality. But there's a lot of strong heroines who are fighting for what they want. They're demanding love. They're demanding pleasure, um, and they're doing it in all different colors and shapes and sizes of bodies. And I think that's something that we should really pay attention to in romance novels. They're not just one thing anymore. There's a lot of diversity out there, a lot of information out there. Kennedy Ryan is one of my favorite authors. She is a Black woman, and her stories feature uh, people of color in them. One of her series is called Grip, is about a white woman and a Black man and their relationship. And there's a lot of things in there about being in an interracial relationship that, as a white woman in a relationship with a white man, I never considered those complications. And so I was getting educated, a little bit culturally educated, in the safe space of that romance novel. So that's what I try to do in my books, and I think a lot of authors are trying to do that too. Romance is a huge industry, $1.4 billion annually in sales. Romance novels sell more than all the other fiction dramas genres put together. So that's a huge platform to get information out, and it's possible that someone reading a romance novel, that might be their only exposure to the idea of agency, consent, uh, that they don't have to have sex with their husband just because they're married to them. That isn't necessarily the way that it. That's not a marriage license isn't an IOU. Some of those kinds of concepts. Romance novels may be the only place that some people are exposed to that information. And then on the flip side, there's a lot of information about consent and safety, and also examples of different techniques and different positions, and how do you start a sexy text with someone, and how do you safely start a sexy conversation. And so a lot of that stuff is modeled in romance novels too. So there's a lot of information that's going out in today's romance novels for a variety of people, and representative of a variety of people as well.
Miss Christina, as an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Oh gosh, short-term goals is to expand readership. I think that's always, and long-term goal. I think that's always an author's goal, is to expand their readership. I love these books. I love the messages in them. I've gotten a lot of powerful feedback from readers that they love these books. They love that they're a little bit different. They love the heroes. Uh, they feel seen in these books, and I just want to expand that. I expand that into the world. I think I want more and more people to read these books, and to know that they deserve to be seen in a romance novel, and often they can be. So I think I think a long-term goal and a short-term goal is just to expand readership, because I'm so passionate about getting real information, particularly around sexual health and sexuality, out into the world. There's 12 states in the union. The United
Mhm.
States don't require sex education to be accurate or fact-based. Like, that's unbelievable to me in some ways. There's just not a lot of really good sexual health information, and men in particular. All genders are suffering, but men have this expectation that they're just supposed to know how to do it and do it well, and women are not supposed to enjoy it, or they're certainly not supposed to masturbate and know about their bodies. And you have all of this stew of people kind of walking around, and in this world of sex that is not they don't have any education about it. They're flailing about, unhappy, or could be happier. So I think I'm just passionate about getting that information out into the world, and I think romance is a great vehicle that adds to other sources of information.
Indeed. Good luck to your goals, Miss Christina. And what is your piece of advice for those people out there who want to write their own book?
Oh, who want to write their own book? Gosh, no one's ever asked me that question before. I have to think for a second. I think my you can do it. You can do it. You can write a book.
Yes.
I think the idea of, oh, you have to have an MFA, you have to have been an English major, you have to have wanted to be a writer your whole life in order to write a book that anyone will want to read. I'm living proof that that's not true. And there's about a million of us who are living proof that that's not true. So I think my advice is to find what you're passionate about and find the book, think about the book that you would like to read, and then write that book. And you can do it.
Yes, you can do it, people. Stop procrastinating and share your talents to the world. Right, right, right. Miss Christina, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, book 101 review in its fifth season as well, comedy 101 in second season, food 101 in its fifth season too, geography 101 in its third season, as well as my love letters. Mental Health 101 is my baby podcast, people. And movie 101 review and music 101 in its fourth season. And science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Miss Christina, what's one thing you wish readers and skeptics understood about the power of romance novel?
I think I I wish that more people recognized the validity and value of romance and reading romance. There's a lot of romances out there that are not well edited, not well written. Those books exist and they exist for a reason, and there's no shade there. But there are a ton of great books written in the romance genre. And so, I say to people in book fairs, I'll say, do you read romance? Oh, no, I don't know. I don't read that. It's sort of like it's offensive to be even asked. Um, I want people to understand that there's a lot to be said in that space. There's a lot that's being said in that space. And if you just say, "Oh, no, I don't read romance. It's trash. It's dribble. No, there's nothing of value there," you're missing out. And I think, yeah, you're missing out a lot.
Indeed, Miss Christina Braver, thank you so much for sharing your books to the world. And we are hoping for more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, can you please invite our
Thank you.
listeners to support all your books?
Yes, please check out my stories. You can reach me on my website at ChristinaBraver.com. All the information and links to buy.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Christina Braver because if you support her, more and more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Christina, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.